I see you there, in the silent hours when sleep abandons you and memories become loud companions. I see the weight on your chest, the tears that fall when no one watches, the questions that circle like hungry birds, the loss that carved you hollow, the betrayal that left you cold, the failure that convinced you that you are alone. I know that heaviness, the one that makes simple tasks feel like mountains to climb. I too have walked through valleys where God seemed to have turned his face away, where prayers fell like stones instead of rising like incense. But I come to tell you what the night taught me, that darkness is not the absence of light, but the birthplace of vision. In your broken places, a doorway waits. In your emptiness, a voice prepares to speak. This is not the end. It is the first honest breath of a new beginning. I remember the night that changed everything for me. The markets of Kanya had closed, the streets emptied of footsteps and voices. I sat alone in my chamber, scrolls unread beside me, ink dried in its well. My body was present, but my spirit felt exiled, wandering in a wasteland I could not name. The faith I had taught to others felt like ashes in my mouth. I had lost Shams, my beloved friend and mirror. With him vanished, the world seemed to lose its gold, its meaning. I questioned everything I had ever believed. I wondered if all my words about God had been nothing but the noise of a hollow drum. That night, I did not seek comfort. I did not run from the void that opened inside me. Instead, I surrendered to it, allowed it to swallow me whole. I sat with my grief as one sits with a dying friend, present, attentive, without false promises. The darkness was not my enemy, but a mother pulling me back into her womb, a teacher erasing the board to write a deeper lesson. What I discovered in that terrible night changed me forever. It was not what I expected to find, not what my books and teachers had prepared me for. It was simpler and more profound. I discovered that God is not only in the light we chase, but in the darkness we fear. The emptiness I felt was not God's absence, but his presence in a form I had never allowed myself to recognize. The silence was not rejection, but invitation. To hear beyond words, to see beyond forms, to feel beyond the boundaries of my limited heart. I learned that sometimes we must be broken open to be filled with truth. Sometimes the soul must be emptied like a cup before it can receive the wine of deeper knowing. In your darkest moment, when you feel most abandoned, most alone, there is an intelligence watching, waiting, holding you together even as you fall apart. I learned this through my tears, through nights when I rocked back and forth like a child, when prayer was nothing but the repeated whisper of please, when hope seemed like a cruel joke. And yet, something in me remained. Something in me still breathed, still listened, still sought meaning in the meaningless. That something was not my strength. It was God's constancy manifesting through my weakness. Do this one simple thing when the night seems endless. Place your hand on your heart. Feel its steady beating. That pulse is the oldest prayer, the one your body knows without teaching. It speaks a truth your fears cannot silence. You are still here, still breathing, still carried by forces you did not create and cannot destroy. Your heart beats not by your command, but by a grace that precedes your understanding. This is the first practice, the beginning of wisdom. To recognize that even in your darkest hour, you participate in a mystery that sustains you. The mystic truth that contradicts all worldly wisdom is this: your crisis is not a punishment, but an initiation. Your breakdown is not failure, but the necessary collapse before rebuilding. In the market of everyday exchange, loss is counted as decrease, but in the divine economy, certain losses make space for immeasurable gain. When I lost Shams, I thought I had lost the face of God. In truth, I was being prepared to see that God has no single face, but reveals himself in everything, even absence, even grief. Each morning after that night of surrender, I began a simple practice. Before words, before plans, before judgments of myself or others, I would sit in the first light and breathe as if it were my first day on earth. I would feel the air enter and leave my body. I would say, "Thank you for this breath that was not guaranteed. Thank you for this day I did not earn." In this small gratitude, I planted a seed of order in the soil of chaos. From this seed grew my salvation, not as escape from suffering, but as transformation within it. The order of the heart begins with acknowledgement. I am here, in this precise moment, with exactly what I have and do not have. God is here too, not as I wish, but as I need. The path forward will reveal itself not through my demand, but through my attention. When I stopped insisting on the shape of my healing, true healing became possible. When I ceased fighting the night, the dawn arrived in its own perfection. We carry our wounds like hidden treasures, do we not? Covered, protected, sometimes forgotten until a careless touch reminds us they still live beneath the surface. I have known the pain of rejection, the ache of betrayal, the hollow silence after loss. In the markets of Kanya, I would pass strangers and wonder if they too housed such private sorrows, invisible to the eye, yet shaping every step they took. I learned that we all carry these sacred wounds, these teachers disguised as tragedies. Your wound is not your enemy. Your pain is not punishment. What breaks you open can also break you free if you learn to read its message with patience and courage. When Shams disappeared from my life, I searched madly through streets and caravanserais. I questioned everyone. I begged God for answers. My desperation turned to anger, my anger to despair. I blamed myself. I blamed others. I even blamed the divine for this cup of suffering. My wound became my identity. My loss became the lens through which I viewed all of creation. Perhaps you understand this fixation, this way that a single pain can color an entire life. Perhaps right now you are living inside your wound, unable to see beyond its edges, convinced that this sorrow defines you completely. I know you carry this weight that others cannot see. I know there are days when you wake up and the first thing you feel is not the morning light, but the familiar ache. I know there are nights when you lie awake rehearsing what you should have done differently, imagining alternate paths where this pain never found you. I understand because I have walked that same circular path, wearing a track in my heart with repetitive thoughts, with questions that have no answers, with regrets that change nothing except my ability to be present to the life still being offered. I want to ask you a question, and I ask you to be honest with me and yourself. How has your wound become a hiding place, a reason to avoid the risk of living fully again? If this touched something real inside you, if you recognize this struggle, write in the comments, I am ready to make peace with my wound. When you share this, you are not just freeing yourself, you are lighting a candle for someone still walking in darkness. Your courage to speak truth may be exactly what another soul needs to hear today. Your vulnerability becomes a doorway for others to step through into their own healing. The wound itself contains the medicine if we dare to look deeply enough. This is the great paradox that the marketplace of quick solutions will never understand. There, on the prayer mat, weeping until dawn, I discovered that my pain for Shams was also a pain of love, and love, even wounded love, carries the signature of the divine. The very capacity to feel such loss is evidence of our connection to something eternal. Without this capacity, we would never know the depth and sweetness of true companionship, whether human or divine. In the silence between my sobs, I began to hear something unexpected, not comfort, not answers, but presence. God was not speaking to me from above my suffering, but from within it, like a mother who does not talk her child out of tears, but sits and holds him as he weeps. This realization changed everything for me. I'd been seeking rescue when what I needed was companionship. I'd been demanding answers when what I needed was acceptance. The wound began to teach me instead of torment me. There's a practice I learned in those long nights that I now offer to you. When the pain rises like a wave threatening to drown you, do not fight it. Instead, place both hands on your heart and say to your wound, I see you. I acknowledge you. You are part of my journey, not separate from it. Breathe slowly as you do this. 4 counts in, hold for 4, release for 6. Feel the warmth of your hands on your chest. Feel the steady rhythm beneath them. This is not magic. It will not make the pain disappear. But it will help you stop running, stop hiding, stop pretending. It will create space around the wound so that it no longer fills your entire being. The spiritual truth that contradicts common understanding is this: your wound is not something to overcome. It is something to integrate. We are not meant to emerge from suffering unchanged, wearing our old skin, resuming our old patterns. We are meant to be transformed by it, to allow it to soften what is hardened, to open what is closed, to humble what has grown proud through ignorance. When I finally accepted that Shams would not return in the form I wanted, I began to feel his presence in ways I could never have imagined, in the turning of a leaf, in the question of a student, in the silence before dawn. This acceptance was not resignation. It was not giving up. It was recognition of a deeper order, one that included my pain rather than excluded it. It was a turning toward rather than away. In that turning, I found a strange new peace, not because the wound had disappeared, but because it had found its rightful place in the larger story of my life. It became a doorway rather than a prison. Through it, I began to glimpse what I could never have seen without this particular breaking. Remember this, beloved. God does not waste your tears. Every drop waters some unseen root within you. The very places where you feel most broken are often where divine light enters most directly. This is not beautiful language meant to disguise ugly truth. This is the hard-earned wisdom of someone who has crawled through the valley of shadow and emerged not unchanged, but paradoxically more whole. The heart that breaks open can contain the whole universe in ways that the protected heart cannot imagine. Tonight, practice this. Write down the name of your wound on a small piece of paper. Hold it in your palm. Close your fingers around it gently as you would hold a wounded bird. Then speak to it with the compassion you would offer a dear friend who suffers. Say, "You are not all of me, but you are part of my journey. I will carry you with dignity rather than shame. I will listen to what you have to teach." Then, place the paper somewhere private but visible, a reminder that you are beginning a new relationship with this pain. Not as victim, but as student. Not as prisoner, but as witness. The greatest illusion that grips the human heart is the belief in separation from each other, from nature, from the divine presence that sustains all breath. I, too, have felt abandoned, cast out from the garden of belonging. After losing Shams, I wandered the streets of Konya like a madman, searching faces, questioning strangers, my heart a raw wound exposed to every casual glance. The loneliness was not just for my friend, but for God himself, who seemed to have withdrawn along with Shams, leaving me in a desert of meaningless forms and empty rituals. I prayed mechanically, taught reluctantly, wrote verses that felt hollow to my own ear. The experience of divine abandonment is perhaps the most painful of all human sufferings. It was during this time of desolation that I discovered the secret hiding in plain sight, that loneliness itself can become a doorway if we do not rush to escape it. Society tells you to fill every empty space, to surround yourself with noise and distraction, to seek company even when that company does not truly touch your soul. In the busy marketplace, silence is feared like death. But I tell you that in the apparent void, in the quiet no one wants to enter, there awaits a presence more intimate than your own heartbeat, more faithful than your dearest friend. In solitude properly entered, you discover you were never truly alone. One evening, as sunset painted the sky in colors no artist could capture, I sat alone on the rooftop of my home. Below me, families gathered for evening meals, their voices rising and falling like gentle waves. I felt separate from them, cut off by a glass wall of grief. But as darkness slowly descended and the first stars appeared, something in me grew still. I stopped fighting against my aloneness and simply allowed myself to be where I was. As I was, a man with empty hands, with unanswered questions, with a heart that still beat despite its wounds. In that acceptance, something shifted. The night air touched my face like a caress. The distant sounds of the city became a kind of music. The stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with my own blood. It was not that my pain disappeared or that answers suddenly arrived. It was that I realized I was being held even in my falling. The same force that kept the stars in their courses was sustaining me in my confusion. The same intelligence that orchestrated the seasons was working in the seasons of my soul. I had been looking for God as something separate from my experience, when in fact, God was the very capacity to experience it all, the seeing itself, not just what is seen, the hearing itself, not just what is heard, the awareness in which all things appear and disappear like clouds in the vast sky of consciousness. If these words are touching something deep in you, if you feel this conversation is for your soul, subscribe to this channel. Here, I share teachings for those seeking truth, transformation, and the awakening of the heart. Activate the bell so my words continue reaching you, like a friend who knows when to arrive at your door with exactly what you need. The companionship you seek is already present, waiting to be recognized. It speaks in the language of ordinary miracles, the precise shade of blue in the evening sky, the perfect temperature of water on your skin, the invisible exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide that keeps you alive without a single thought on your part. These are not poetic metaphors, but actual doorways into the presence that never leaves. The divine is not hiding from you. It is hiding in plain sight, disguised as your everyday life. The sacred is not elsewhere, but here, not later, but now, not in someone else's experience, but in the very texture of your own. There is a practice so simple that the sophisticated mind wants to dismiss it, yet so profound that it can transform your experience of life completely. Each day, choose one ordinary action, washing your hands, walking to your door, preparing a meal, and perform it with complete attention. Feel the water on your skin, notice the sensation of your feet meeting the ground, observe the colors and textures of the food. Do not add anything spiritual to the experience. Simply be fully present to what is already happening. In this complete attention, the veil between the sacred and the ordinary dissolves. You discover that they were never truly separate. The mystical truth that contradicts conventional teaching is this: you do not need to reach God. You need to awaken to how God is already reaching you, already supporting you, already breathing you. Your very longing for the divine is itself divine. Your thirst is a message from the water. Your hunger is a letter from the bread. Even your doubt, yes, especially your doubt, is a hidden form of faith, for you cannot doubt what you do not, on some level, already know to be true. When I understood this, my loneliness transformed from abandonment to intimacy. The very space that seemed empty revealed itself to be overflowing with presence. God speaks most clearly in silence, moves most powerfully in stillness. This is why the practice of intentional quiet is not a luxury but a necessity for the soul that seeks truth. Each morning, before the world's demands flood in, sit for just 3 minutes in silence. No grand spiritual techniques, no complex visualizations, just your body breathing, your heart beating, your awareness open to what is. Place one hand on your chest if that helps you stay present. Feel the rise and fall of your breath. Notice the thoughts that pass through without following them. This simple practice is a declaration of trust in what sustains you even when you forget to pay attention. The heart becomes ordered not through force, but through faithful return. Each time you notice you have wandered into worry, regret, or fantasy, gently bring yourself back to the present moment. This is not punishment, but practice. This is not striving, but remembering. Like training a beloved animal, you guide your attention with firmness and kindness. Over time, you begin to feel the difference between the constricted state of separation and the expansive state of presence. You learn to recognize when you have pulled away from life and how to return to its embrace. I leave you with this truth that changed me. Dios no está al final del camino. Dios es el camino mismo. God is not at the end of the path. God is the path itself. The divine is not waiting for you to be different, to be better, to be more spiritual. The divine is waiting for you to recognize what has been true all along, that there is no distance between you and the source except the one created by thought. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, speak this one sentence aloud. I am never alone, even when I feel lonely. Let these words be the last you hear before dreams take you. Let them work in the soil of your unconscious, planting seeds that will bloom in ways you cannot yet imagine. In the years following my deepest grief, I discovered a truth that the marketplace of quick solutions does not want you to know. Spiritual awakening is not a lightning strike, but a slow dawn. I had prayed for sudden transformation, for the kind of divine intervention that parts the clouds and speaks in thunder. Instead, I received something more valuable, more enduring, the humble gift of daily discipline. Not chains to bind me, but wings that formed one feather at a time through consistent, loving attention to the ordinary moments of life. This discipline is not punishment, but the highest form of self-respect, the practical expression of your soul's dignity. I remember walking through the hills outside Kenya one spring morning. The air was cool against my skin, the scent of wild herbs rising with the warming earth. I had been practicing the discipline of presence for months, returning again and again to my breath, to sensation, to the reality before me, rather than the stories in my mind. On this particular morning, I noticed something had changed. I was not trying to be present. I simply was present. The effort had transformed into grace. My attention rested naturally on the beauty around me, instead of scattering like frightened birds at the slightest disturbance. This is the secret alchemy of spiritual discipline. What begins as conscious effort eventually becomes your natural state. The most powerful practices are often the simplest. In my own life, 3 disciplines became the foundation upon which everything else was built. First, I committed to sitting in silence each morning as the first light appeared. Not to achieve anything, not to become anyone, but simply to remember who I already was beneath the layers of thought, emotion, and identity. Second, I established one act of order that I performed with complete attention, whether washing my teacup, arranging my writing materials, or sweeping the courtyard. In this single ordered action, I found a template for approaching all of life. Third, I practiced conscious kindness, one act each day that served another without expectation of return or recognition. These practices may seem small against the magnitude of your suffering or the complexity of your life. The mind wants dramatic solutions, radical changes, complete transformations. But I tell you with the certainty born of experience, the path to heaven runs through the mundane earth. The small, consistent choice made day after day carries more power to change your life than the grand gesture made once and abandoned. The humble practice faithfully maintained opens doors that spectacular efforts leave closed. The discipline of ordinary attention reveals extraordinary treasures hidden in plain sight. The paradox that confounds the calculating mind is this: freedom comes through commitment, not avoidance. True liberation emerges not from escaping structure, but from creating the right kind of structure, one that aligns with your deepest values and highest vision. Without this structure, the soul wanders aimlessly, vulnerable to every passing desire and fear. With it, the soul finds its proper channel, like a river that flows more powerfully when its banks are clearly defined. The structure is not the enemy of spirit, but its necessary vessel in this material world of time and space. God is present not only in ecstatic moments, but in the quiet discipline of showing up day after day for your own life. The divine hand supports you not by removing obstacles, but by giving you the strength and clarity to move through them with grace. When I sit in the pre-dawn darkness, feeling the weight of my body on the prayer mat, sensing the air enter and leave my lungs, I am not reaching for God. I am allowing God to reach me through the doorway of my own attention. This is not dramatic, not spectacular, but it is real, and it is available to you right now, regardless of your circumstances. Here is a practice I offer you, simple yet powerful. Each morning, before engaging with the world's demands and distractions, sit upright for just 7 minutes. Place your hands on your knees, palms up in a gesture of receptivity. Feel the weight and warmth of your body. Notice your breath moving in and out without trying to control it. When thoughts arise, and they will, simply observe them passing like clouds in the sky of your awareness. Do not fight them. Do not follow them. Return gently to the sensation of breathing whenever you notice you've been carried away. This is not meditation as achievement, but as remembrance, returning home to what is always here. Each evening, choose one area of your living space to arrange with conscious care. It might be your bed made with attention to each fold and crease. It might be your table cleared and wiped clean. It might be your clothes folded and placed with respect. As you create this small island of order in a chaotic world, know that you are not just organizing external objects, but establishing a visible reflection of internal clarity. The outer arrangement both expresses and reinforces the inner condition. This practice may seem trivial compared to your greater concerns, but I promise you, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. Before sleep, bring to mind one person who crossed your path that day. It might be someone you know well or a stranger you encountered briefly. Offer a simple prayer or wish for their well-being. Feel this wish emanating from your heart like ripples spreading on still water. This practice gradually dissolves the illusion of separation that causes so much suffering. It reminds you that we are all connected in ways invisible to the eye, but perceptible to the awakened heart. In blessing others, you bless yourself. In wishing peace for them, you plant seeds of peace within your own consciousness. Remember this truth: when discipline feels like an unwelcome burden, the seed does not complain about the soil that surrounds and constrains it. The seed embraces that very constraint as the necessary condition for its unfoldment. Without the resistance of the soil, the seed could not develop roots. Without roots, it could not grow toward the light. Your limitations, your struggles, your daily returning to simple practice, these are not obstacles to your flowering, but the very ground from which your authentic being emerges. The discipline that seems to restrict you is actually setting you free. There comes a time in the journey of the soul when transformation becomes visible, not as a distant hope, but as a present reality. After months of faithful practice, I began to notice subtle yet undeniable changes in my life. Not the dramatic miracles I had once craved, but something more substantial, more trustworthy. The anger that once consumed me like fire began to arise more slowly, with space around it that allowed for choice rather than reaction. The anxiety that had been my constant companion started to feel more like an occasional visitor than a permanent resident. My sleep deepened. My dreams spoke in clearer language. My body itself seemed to walk more lightly upon the earth, as if some invisible burden had been gently lifted from my shoulders. I want you to understand something essential about this transformation. It did not erase my humanity or eliminate all struggle. I still felt the full range of emotions: grief, fear, confusion, desire. I still faced difficult decisions and painful circumstances. But these experiences no longer defined me completely. They moved through me like weather through the sky, while something deeper, more constant remained untouched. This is the subtle shift that marks true spiritual maturation, not the absence of human experience, but a new relationship to it, a spaciousness that allows you to be with whatever arises without being consumed by it. One autumn afternoon, I sat in the garden of a friend's home in Kenya. The leaves were turning golden, preparing for their release from the branches that had held them through spring and summer. A light wind moved through the trees, and I watched as some leaves held on while others surrendered to the air and spiraled down to earth. In that ordinary moment, I received a teaching more powerful than any I had found in books or lectures. I saw that transformation follows a natural rhythm. There's a time for growth, a time for fullness, a time for release, and a time for apparent emptiness that is actually pregnant with renewal. Fighting against this rhythm creates suffering. Aligning with it brings peace, even amid change and loss. You have been taught to measure transformation by external standards, achievements, possessions, recognition from others. But I tell you that the truest signs of spiritual ripening often appear in the most ordinary moments of your life. Notice how you respond when plans collapse, when someone criticizes you unjustly, when physical discomfort arises. Do you react with the same old patterns, or do you find a new space opening between stimulus and response? Pay attention to your speech, not just its content, but its tone, its intent, its effect on those who hear it. Has it become more truthful, more kind, more necessary? Observe your relationship with silence. Do you still flee from it into noise and distraction, or have you begun to recognize it as a friend, a teacher, a sacred dimension of existence? The world will not necessarily applaud your transformation. Those accustomed to your old patterns may even resist the emergence of your truer self, for your change disturbs the familiar dynamics upon which they have come to rely. This, too, is part of the path, learning to honor your inner growth even when external validation is withheld. As your roots grow deeper into the soil of authentic being, you become less dependent on others to confirm your worth or purpose. You begin to draw nourishment directly from the source that sustains all life, the invisible current that runs beneath the surface of ordinary existence. Here is a mysterious truth that contradicts conventional wisdom. Real transformation is not self-improvement, but self-remembering. You are not becoming someone new. You are uncovering someone ancient, someone who existed before the wounds, before the conditioning, before the forgetting. This original self has never been damaged, never been lost, only obscured, like the sun behind passing clouds, like the ocean beneath turbulent waves. Your practices are not creating this self, but removing the obstacles to its natural expression. This is why transformation often feels like coming home rather than arriving somewhere foreign. God manifests in this process not as external architect, but as internal remembrance. The divine is the very impulse that draws you toward wholeness, the magnetic pull toward your own completion. When you sense a quiet dissatisfaction with mechanical living, when you hunger for meaning beyond material success, when you glimpse a possibility more beautiful than your current reality, this is not random discontent, but the sacred at work within you, calling you toward your true nature. The discomfort of growth is actually a sign of divine presence, not absence. The questions that disturb your sleep are holy visitors, not enemies to be silenced, a practice to anchor this understanding. Once each day, pause and ask yourself, what has changed in me? What small shift in perception, in reaction, in choice reveals the work of transformation? Do not look for dramatic evidence, but for subtle signs. A moment when you responded with patience instead of irritation, an instance when you chose truth over convenience, a brief experience of contentment amid unchanged circumstances. Write this observation on a small piece of paper and place it in a jar or box dedicated to this purpose. Over time, these documented moments become a testament to the reality of your growth, visible evidence of invisible grace. Another practice. Each evening, stand before a mirror and look into your own eyes, beyond the surface appearance, beyond judgment or critique. Simply gaze with the intention to see the unchanging essence behind the changing form. Stay with this gaze for 1 full minute, breathing naturally. This is not an exercise in vanity but in recognition, acknowledging the divine spark that animates your particular expression of humanity. If resistance arises, as it often does, simply notice it without allowing it to break your gaze. This practice gradually dissolves the artificial boundary between the sacred and the ordinary, revealing the holy nature of your embodied existence. The spiritual paradox I offer you is this: transformation is both gradual and sudden, both earned and given. There is the slow, faithful work of daily practice, the consistent turning toward truth and love amid all circumstances. And there are also moments of grace, unexpected openings when the veil thins and you glimpse reality with startling clarity. Neither approach alone completes the journey. The gradual without the sudden becomes mechanical. The sudden without the gradual lacks foundation. Honor both dimensions. Work as if everything depends on your effort. Remain open as if everything depends on grace. In this balanced approach, the miracle of transformation unfolds according to its own perfect timing, neither forced nor delayed. I leave you with an aphorism born from my own experience. The one who tends the garden of the heart harvests fruits invisible to the marketplace. This is the quiet promise of transformation. Not that you will gain the world's approval or escape life's challenges, but that you will develop the capacity to experience the ordinary as sacred, limitation as invitation, and impermanence as the very condition that makes love urgent and precious. In this transformed perception lies a peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away, a joy not dependent on changing circumstances, but on unchanging presence. As we draw our conversation to a close, I speak to you not as one who has completed the journey, but as a fellow traveler who has walked perhaps a few steps ahead on the same path that calls to you. The wisdom I share comes not from perfect attainment, but from honest seeking, from falling and rising, from moments of clarity followed by times of confusion. This is the authentic nature of the spiritual life, not a straight line of constant ascent, but a spiral that sometimes seems to return us to familiar territory, yet always at a different level of understanding. If you recognize yourself in this description, know that you are not failing but proceeding exactly as you should. I spent decades of my life in prayer, study, and contemplation. I wrote thousands of verses attempting to capture in words what ultimately transcends language. I taught students who came to me seeking certainty, answers, a clear map of territories that can only be known through direct experience. Through all of this, I gradually came to a humbling realization. The spiritual path is not about arriving at a final destination where all questions are answered and all struggles cease. It is about developing the capacity to embrace the mystery of existence with an open heart, to dance with uncertainty rather than fight against it, to find peace not in perfect understanding but in perfect trust. On a winter morning in Kenya, snow had fallen through the night, transforming the familiar landscape into something new and pristine. I walked alone before dawn, my footprints the first to mark the white expanse. The air was utterly still, as if the world were holding its breath. In that silence, a question arose within me, not from the mind, but from somewhere deeper. Who walks this path? I stopped and stood completely still. The question reverberated through my being, dissolving the boundaries between inner and outer, between seeker and sought. For a timeless moment, there was simply awareness, simply being, simply the perfect wholeness that had never been broken. This is the secret hidden at the heart of all spiritual seeking. What you are looking for is what is looking. If you remember nothing else from our time together, remember this. God is not distant, not separate, not withheld. The divine presence permeates your existence as water saturates the ocean. You cannot earn it, for it is already given. You cannot lose it, for it is what you are. Your spiritual practices are not about creating connection, but about removing the obstacles to recognizing the connection that already exists. Your prayers are not crossing a distance, but acknowledging an intimacy more fundamental than thought can comprehend. Even in your moments of deepest doubt, this presence remains steady, patient, unwavering in its commitment to your awakening. The practice that sustained me through all seasons of my life, through grief and joy, through certainty and doubt, is one I now entrust to you. 3 times each day, morning, noon, and evening. Pause whatever you are doing. Take 3 conscious breaths, feeling the air enter and leave your body. Then silently repeat these words. I am here. God is here. This moment is enough. This practice takes less than a minute, yet it has the power to reorient your entire being from fragmentation to wholeness, from worry to presence, from isolation to communion. It is a thread of remembrance woven through the fabric of your days. A continuous return to what is most real amid all that is transient. Another practice to anchor your awakening. Once each week, write a letter to your future self. Describe not your external circumstances, but your internal condition, the quality of your attention, the nature of your thoughts, the orientation of your heart. Write as if to a beloved friend, with honesty and compassion. Then seal this letter and open it 1 month later. Read it not with judgment, but with curious attention to what has shifted, what has remained, what is revealing itself through the passage of time. This practice develops the witness consciousness that can observe your journey with neither pride nor shame, but with the loving awareness that fosters true growth. Each night before sleep, place one hand on your heart and speak this truth. This body will not last forever, but the love that moves through it is eternal. Feel the warmth of your hand, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the miracle of breath that continues without your conscious direction. Allow gratitude to arise naturally for this temporary vehicle that carries your eternal essence. This practice gradually dissolves the fear of death that underlies so much human suffering. It reminds you that while form is indeed impermanent, the consciousness that experiences form participates in something beyond time, beyond birth and death. The spiritual truth that most contradicts worldly thinking is this: you are not a separate entity struggling to connect with other separate entities in a fragmented universe. You are an integral expression of a unified whole, temporarily experiencing the illusion of separation in order to know love as a choice rather than merely a condition. This understanding does not diminish your uniqueness, but places it in proper context. Your particular form is like a wave on the ocean, distinct in its expression, yet made of the same substance as all other waves and as the ocean itself. When this truth moves from intellectual concept to lived experience, fear begins to dissolve, competition gives way to cooperation, and judgment transforms into compassionate understanding. If this message resonated in your soul, subscribe and be part of this awakening journey. Each week I bring wisdom for those who chose the path of true transformation, and leave in the comments, I embrace both my humanity and my divinity. This simple declaration marks the beginning of your journey back home, back to yourself. My final offering is an aphorism distilled from a lifetime of seeking. The thirst that draws you to the well is itself evidence that water exists. Your very longing for awakening is proof that what you seek is real and is already moving toward you even as you move toward it. Trust this longing. Honor it. Follow where it leads without demanding to see the entire path in advance. The next step is always revealed in the present moment if you are paying attention. This is the essence of faith, not blind belief in an external authority, but radical trust in the intelligence that stirs within your own deepest knowing. I leave you as I found you, a divine being having a human experience, a perfect soul navigating an imperfect world. The pain that brought you to these teachings is not punishment, but invitation. The questions that keep you awake at night are not obstacles, but doorways. The longing that sometimes feels like an ache in your chest is not lack, but fullness seeking expression. All that you have experienced, all that you have suffered, all that you have learned and unlearned, nothing has been wasted. It has all been preparation for this moment of potential awakening, this precise intersection of time and eternity where you stand right now, reading these words, feeling whatever you are feeling, thinking whatever you are thinking. In this ordinary moment, extraordinary presence waits to be recognized. In this human life, divine love seeks to know itself through you as you. This is the miracle hiding in plain sight. This is the treasure buried in the field of your own awareness. This is the kingdom that has always been within.